Welcome to Unity of Boulder. So we're going to start with a fun song. So if you'd like to stand with us and sing along, dance around if you want, we'd love to see it. Go ahead. to pray, forgot to be still and know, forgot to forgive myself until I forgave myself, forgot to ask for help, I forgot to say a word, forgot to believe in me, believe in my spirit's word. There is nowhere that God is not. No, no, no. There is nowhere that God is not. There is nowhere that God is not. No, no, no. 'Cause everywhere I am, I know what I've got. There is nowhere that God is not. No, no, no. Everywhere I am, I know what I've got. Everywhere I am, I know what I've got. Everywhere I am, I know what I've got. Woo! Yeah, that was fun. All right. Thank you. So now we'd like you to stand, as you're already standing, and turn and greet each other and say good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Unity of Boulder. Start things off with a few real quick announcements. Today, these are all just a bunch of upcoming events here at Unity of Boulder. The first one actually starts today from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. It's our Conscious Communication class. That's a walk-in group. Anyone who wants to join that group can just go right on. It's right downstairs in a room directly under the kitchen today. So check that on out if you never have before. Tomorrow night, Monday night, is our divorce support group that meets from 7 to 8:30 right here in the back of this room. That's a drop-in group as well if you're going through a divorce or any hardship like that. Come on out for that. Our women's group meets this Thursday at noon, led by Norma. That's our Sacred Feminine Circle. All women are invited to attend that. Our People's Anonymous group meets on Tuesday from 7 to 8. And that's our 12-step program for anything that's not just specific about alcohol. It's anything you're trying to quit using our 12-step program, and that meets in the back of this room on Tuesday evenings. And coming up September 22nd, we have our Fall Equinox celebration led by Norma Groverland. And that we basically are drumming, chanting, and dancing. And if the weather's nice, we usually do it out by the garden out back here. But if it's not as nice, we do it right over here in Fellowship Hall. So that's Saturday, September 22nd, 6:30. Everyone's invited. And finally, we've got on September 23rd, that's a Sunday, following our second service, we're going to have a celebration potluck celebrating Jack and Norma being here at Unity of Boulder for 40 years. That is awesome. They've had a lot of impact in this area for a long time over that period of time. So please come out for that. If you have a dish to share, please come and join us. We always have a great time at our potlucks anyways. But we do have a request. If anyone here happens to have any pictures of Jack or Norma or both of them, or even pictures of the old church or when this church was just being built, anything 15 years old or older, we would love to borrow those. We'll get them back to you, but we'd love to borrow them to see if we can maybe put together a slideshow or something. So if you do have anything like that, please bring them over to any one of us in the office, and we'll take great care of them and get them back to you. Now I'd like to have my friend Jimmy come on out here. He's going to talk about a benefit concert coming up here. Here's Jimmy.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. How are you? Can you hear me okay? All right. I'm Keeney's son also. Woohoo! You guys all know and love Keeney. I live in Hygiene, and my neighbors and I have started a group called SOSVV, Save Our St. Vrain Valley. And our mission is to prevent a huge gravel mining operation from basically gutting 600 acres of the St. Vrain Valley, the entire corridor from 66 to Hygiene, from CMEX to 61st. They want to turn into a huge gravel mining pit. And so now we are fighting that legally. We lost a Board of Appeals decision 3-5, or excuse me, we won it 3-5, but you need a 4-1 vote in Boulder, unfortunately. So we are now asking the community to come out and support us. We are putting on an amazing show September 27th at Planet Bluegrass that is basically going to help us raise money to pay for the legal fees, which is a lot. So I want to invite you all to share this with your friends, neighbors, come out and join us. I might even be able to talk Keeney and Rick into doing a prayer duet, possibly. I'm going to be out at the table by the elevators if anybody wants to ask any questions and get a copy of this that has the date and all the other information. There's also an email sign-up sheet. Thank you very much. Hope to see you there.
Thanks, Jimmy. That concert he's talking about, the venue is in Lyons, and it's a beautiful outdoor venue where this concert is. If any of you heard Centisha's talk a few weeks ago about how she was at a concert that got rained out a little bit during the Indigo Girls, that's where he's talking about. And also the place that he's talking about trying to save, the St. Vrain Valley, if you leave Boulder to the north, it's 10 minutes north of Boulder, so it's not far away from here. Now I would like to invite our friend Steve Hayes out here, he is actually the leader of our conscious communication group that meets today at 1 to 3.
Good morning. It's my privilege to lead us in a prayer. So I encourage you to settle in your seat, take a deep breath, let go of outer concerns, and just become present to this moment. Today, let us be and practice being channels of unconditional love. First, let us receive unconditional love. So take a moment, this moment, and see yourself surrounded with a warm red light. Enfold yourself and surround yourself in a light. And affirm with me and breathe into this. I am accepted. I am healed. I can relax and breathe easily. Now let us practice giving unconditional love. In this moment, I encourage you to visualize your brothers and sisters, all of humanity, the people. See all people surrounded in a warm red light, enfolded and embraced. See all humanity accepted as they are. All of humanity healed, relaxed, and breathing easily. Now let us give to the earth. See this wondrous planet that we are on. A warm red light surrounding the earth, all living things and all systems. See the earth honored. See the earth healed. See the earth at ease and breathing easily. Father, Mother God, we are so grateful for the omnipresence of unconditional love in all of the universe, in all things. And we are grateful that if we don't know how to love in a situation, that we can stop and listen and let go and let God and be shown how to love in that moment. Thank you, God, for all your infinite blessings. Amen.
We invite you into this room, into this spirit with us, into love, and ask you to sing with us if you feel led. In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am, letting fear and worry fall away from me. I open my eyes and see there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. When I lose myself, when it seems I've lost my way, when I go inside and quiet my mind, I can hear Spirit gently say, there is only love. There is only
Beautiful. Thank you, music team. All right. How are we all doing today? Oftentimes I open with a meditation, but I felt like that was enough of a meditation. We don't need that. Now, I know you guys thought you were going to get out of it for second service, but I'm going to need you two to stand up again. This is Tom and Skipper Flippin from Las Vegas, from my congregation in Las Vegas, visiting us. I did that to them first service as well. But they are the type of congregants that when you're coming in to give a talk and you're just feeling like nobody's getting it, and maybe your church isn't really getting it at all, maybe there's no hope, and then you look out and you see those two and you go, no, they are getting it. Because those are two enlightened beings. So you guys should get in touch with them after the service, find them, say hello, and pick their brains, figuratively speaking. All right. Let's get to our words of wisdom for today. This is from John Wesley. He's the co-founder of Methodism, or what became the Methodist movement. He said, "Bring me a worm that can comprehend a man, and then I'll show you a man that can comprehend the triune of God." A worm that can understand a human is as likely as a human that can understand the full nature of God. So this talks about the difficulty of that task at hand. So this is our series of the calling of the mystic. This is the second week in that series. A mystic may mean different things to different people, and different people sitting here today. For me, a mystic is someone who is spiritually enlightened, who is an awakened human being. They're still in the physical human experience, but they've come into their true nature, their higher nature. A mystic is a self-realized person, if you're familiar with that terminology. And they're living from that higher nature, which we call the Christ nature or the Christ consciousness. Others call it the Buddha nature. Some people would call it living in the flow or in alignment with the Tao, if you're familiar with Taoism. Living in constant communication and communion with God. Now, Eric Butterworth is a renowned Unity minister that was a minister for many decades in the New York area, and he was packing churches every Sunday nonstop. Brilliant minister, and he had this to say: "By whatever definition we hold, Jesus was a mystic of mystics. It has been said that a mystic is one who is no longer mystified by religions, theologies, by doctrines." That is from the book Discover the Power Within You, which is actually one of the books we're studying in the class I'm teaching ongoing right now. So you think of the people of Jesus' time, and many people actually in our current time, were locked into an old religious idea of God, an idea of God that needed to evolve. A God that was seen separate from us, a God that was seen to have limited human traits like judgment and doubt and fear and jealousy. And being a mystic teacher, Jesus spent much of his ministry trying to bring the people of the time and to bring us into a more enlightened relationship and understanding of God. So Jesus was using new terminology that people were not familiar with at the time. And in this next quote I'm going to bring up, he's using the term Father and referring to God as the Father, which confuses the disciples, which if you've read the New Testament, they're almost always confused. They almost are never getting it whatsoever. That's why I enjoy it. It's kind of a comedy of errors. Then he said to them, Jesus is speaking, the disciples are speaking, my apologies. Then they said to him, "Where is your Father?" Jesus answered, "You know neither me nor my Father. If you knew me, you would know my Father also." Not only is he introducing them to the concept of God as a relative or as a father figure, but he's also opening them to the truth that God is expressing in and through us. He's saying, God is expressing in and through me. If you don't recognize me as that expression, how could you possibly recognize God? So this is where he's starting to push the mold, and it's the Christ in us and it's the Christ in Jesus challenging everyone to keep evolving and expanding our concept of God, to never accept that we've reached the point, to never stop and think that we get it, but to continually challenge ourselves to always conceive of a bigger God than we had yesterday. And in the human condition, of which most of us here are a part, I know we're in Boulder, so not everyone is human. So if you're not human and you're here, ignore that I said in the human condition. But anyway, for the rest of us, it's difficult for us to truly comprehend the vastness of God. With such a limited and finite viewpoint of the world from our 5 physical senses, look at you beautiful people, you're back. Oh, anyway. There's so many enlightened souls in here, I don't know why I'm talking. Anyway, just a recap, I guess, for you guys. But we have such a limited viewpoint of the world from our 5 physical senses. The expanse of God, the infinite expanse of God, is almost entirely lost on us because our perception is so limited to where we are. Now, of course, through meditation and spiritual practice, we can grow our awareness of God. We can go beyond just the 5 physical senses to that expansion. But even for those of us that are on the spiritual path, we find ourselves at times thinking we get it. We might have evolved our concept, and then we come to a place where we do think we get it. We say, oh, yeah, God is love. God is in and through all things. I get it. And we think we have arrived, and sort of the growth stops right there. And I think when it comes to spiritual growth, whenever we think we get it, that is a point from the universe saying it's time to go further. If we ever think we get it, that is a sign from the universe that it's time to push further, to expand further. So I want to give examples of what we are dealing with here with this concept of trying to understand God. And so I was listening to a podcast, the podcast of comedian Norm Macdonald, if you're familiar with him. He was actually interviewing Larry King on the podcast, and I'm sure we all know Larry King. And they were discussing all sorts of things, but all of a sudden they stumbled onto the discussion of death, which then quickly transitioned to a discussion about God. And so this is where we're going to pick up in the podcast.
But look, can I calm your fears about death?
Yeah, please.
Be
serious. Are you being serious?
I'm being completely serious. Because I used to be, as he knows, obsessed with it. And I would ruminate it all night. And then I came to a realization that you and death will never intersect. As long as you're here, death is not. As long as death is there, you aren't.
Yeah, but since you know it's coming.
Oh, but you don't want that. You want to go.
But knowledge, I can't take away the knowledge that it's coming. I don't believe I'm going anywhere.
You don't?
Do not believe in a higher power looking down on me. I see too much. I've interviewed too many religious leaders, too many people who I've never got the answer to the one question, which is why? Why Connecticut children? Why? Why a bomber in Boston? Because if there is a God, yeah, he's omnipotent. Yes. If he's omnipotent, he could prevent it. Yeah. Why didn't he prevent it?
So I was referring to a few tragic accidents that happened recently when that interview happened, talking about school shootings, talking about bombings in different cities, and how can you possibly answer the question of why? This is fundamentally the question he's saying, but when I heard, I'm going to take that down so you don't get distracted. Don't let that play again. Okay, good. When I heard him say that, I wasn't expecting it to go to a conversation about God. They were talking about all sorts of ridiculous things, and all of a sudden it was like, boom. They went right to this discussion about God. And when I heard that, my jaw just hit the floor that Larry King said that. Now, here is Larry King. I respect him as a very highly intelligent human being, a person who's spoken one-on-one with some of the greatest minds on our planet for decades at a time, and people we have no access to. He gets to speak to on a daily basis, these incredible minds. And still, he is stuck on a very basic understanding of God. That just blew my mind. How is that possible? So this is the fundamental question that he's stuck on. Why does God let bad things happen to good and innocent people? Now, it's a valid question, but it's also a very basic question. It is one that ministers get fairly often. You talk to any unity minister or any minister at all, and they probably get it several times a year, maybe 4, 5, 6 times a year, depending on where their congregation is. And the primary problem with this question is that it's based on a very small concept of God. A very small concept of God. Now, for this question to even make sense to the person asking it or the person hearing it, our concept of God has to be so small that we actually believe God's awareness is no more expanded than our own. We have to actually believe that to ask this question. We have to assume that God judges people as good or bad just like we do. That God judges people as innocent or guilty just like we do. We have to assume that God makes these judgments based on the same limited information, the same limited criteria that we do and that we have. Isn't that sounding a little bit insane? So think about it. The question is, why does God let bad things happen to good and innocent people? This question requires the following assumptions. God judges people and situations like I do. God favors some people over others like I do. God has the same viewpoint of suffering as I do. God has the same viewpoint of life and death as I do. You would have to check all those boxes to ask that question. That is a very small, limited concept of God. And that is why my jaw hit the floor when I heard Larry King say that. He's still operating with this concept of God. At no point in time in all the brilliant people he's interviewed, from the spiritual world to the religious world to the agnostic world to scientists, at no point in time was he ever exposed to a more expansive concept of God than this. I couldn't even wrap my head around how that is even possible. As we grow in awareness and as we mature in age and as we deepen our understanding of life and the universe and the natural flow of things, don't you think our concept of God should be evolving during that time? The fact that we could get to be 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old and still have the same concept of God that was taught to us at 6 years old in Sunday school just blows my mind. How is that possible? How do you arrive after all those years with the same concept of God? No one has challenged that. So I want to give an example so we can kind of see the relationship of this, of us to God, and try to understand that. When I was 19 years old, I applied for a job with Cirque du Soleil. I don't know if everyone's familiar with Cirque du Soleil. This is their logo. They are a circus that only has human performers, acrobats. They're one of the most amazing companies in the world for performance. If you've seen their shows, you know they're unmatched in terms of quality in their performance. So I wanted to be a sound engineer for Cirque du Soleil. That was my dream. They saw my resume. They actually called me, and I actually went through several phone interviews with the company, and they were liking what I was saying. So they were actually scheduling me to fly out to Amsterdam to meet one of their touring shows, to actually meet the crew on the show to see if I jived with the crew. That would be the last step in the process before they hired me. I was one step away from my dream job at 19 until on the phone call with my point of contact, his name was Jacques. They're based out of Canada. He's French-Canadian. Jacques was the one that was putting together the flight plans to get me to Amsterdam. He's the one I've been interviewing and doing all that stuff with. For the first time, he saw on my resume that I was 19. Apparently, this had not passed his eye the whole time he'd been looking at my resume and interviewing me and talking to me. For the very first time, he realized right then and there that I was 19. And at that moment, he sort of gasped. I heard him over the phone gasped. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we've made a terrible mistake." And he wrapped up the phone call, and that was that. So I was out of the running for the position. There was nothing I could do to get a hold of him after that. It was over. There was no communication allowed. Now, at age 19, I didn't get it. I was angry. I was upset. I was confused. I was mad at Jacques. I was mad at the whole company for their age discrimination and their closed-mindedness. And I'm thinking, I have a right. This is age discrimination. I should do something about this. But what I didn't know was what I didn't know. And I didn't realize what I didn't know until I had more experience in life and matured. Over the years, as I started mixing bigger and bigger shows and bigger venues, it became abundantly clear what I didn't have and what I couldn't have had at age 19. And that was extensive real-world experience. It was impossible. In this industry, you cannot be the top mixer in the world by age 19 because you have not seen all the insanity that happens during shows, which you learn from year after year after year, after mic cables breaking, after speakers falling and almost killing people. Literally, all these things you learn from to be able to get to a position like they have at Cirque du Soleil. So Jacques was looking at the bigger picture. From the safety of the acrobats, who I would be flying speakers above and hanging in a tent above their heads as they fly around and shake the tent and perform, to the simple concept that, was I really mature enough to live full-time on the road in a circus tent without losing my mind? Jacques was aware of things that I did not even exist in my world yet. I had such a small picture of, this is what I want. I wasn't looking from the big picture of his view. So there were things that I could not even comprehend or imagine from the perspective of a 19-year-old sound engineer. Only after maturing and increasing my awareness through time could I understand why Jacques had to make that decision. And it was fundamentally for my safety and the safety of everyone else. Now, I want to continue with how we put God in a ridiculously small box. I want to show you a video interview with a minister named Rob Bell. He's sort of a progressive minister that I believe has left ministering in a church and now puts out videos online and books and things of that nature. This interview took place in 2011, so this is shortly after the tragic tsunami in Japan, if you all remember that. And Rob Bell has been invited onto this news show to talk about his latest book, right? So he's showed up to talk about his latest book. What he didn't realize is he's now about to get grilled about God and not his book. So here's where we pick up.
In the life to come. And Pastor Rob Bell joins us now. Good afternoon, sir. Before we come to talk about the book, just help us with this tragedy in Japan. Which of these is true? Either God is all-powerful, but he doesn't care about the people of Japan, and therefore they're suffering, or he does care about the people of Japan, but he's not all-powerful. Which one is it?
I begin with the belief that God, when we shed a tear, God sheds a tear. So I begin with a divine being who is profoundly empathetic, compassionate, and stands in solidarity with us. Secondly, the dominant story of the scriptures is about restoration, it's about renewal, it's about rebirth, it's about a God who insists in the midst of this chaos, the last word hasn't been spoken. And so people of faith have clung to this promise and this hope that God will essentially fix this place. And it's a beautiful hope, and I think we ought to keep it front and center, especially right now.
So which of those is true? He's all-powerful and he cares, or he cares and is not all-powerful?
I think that this is a paradox at the heart of the divine, and some paradoxes are best left exactly as they are.
Okay.
I can't imagine showing up to talk about a book I wrote, and that's the first question that was given me. I want you to define God based on these two criteria. Okay, could you give me a minute? And I really wish Rob Bell had had the peace of mind to respond a little bit more deeply. He is a very deep ministry, does a lot of great work out there. But there is no doubt, I recognize that when you are under attack, you kind of get knocked off your A game. And he didn't even have any preparation whatsoever. He was just knocked in the face right away. But talk about a leading question. If you know, like a leading question in a courtroom and they say that was a leading question, it means they're just trying to get you to a specific answer. It's not actually a question. It's just leading you in a certain direction. Rob is given two options, right? We're now going to be defining the infinite God based on two options. both of which lead us to the same basic conclusion. God is not all-loving, or God is not all-powerful, or both. Those are the only options he gets to choose from based on that question. And it's posed to him again as if he could answer it. Because the assumption is, if there was an all-loving and all-powerful God, this God would intervene. That is the assumption. If there was this all-loving, all-powerful God, this God would intervene. And because this God does not intervene, it means that this God is either not all-loving or not all-powerful. That is the assumption in the question. And the maturity of this question is actually on par with a question that was posed to me by a friend when I was in junior high. So I just want to set the standard there. This is the question he posed to me. Can God make a rock so big that not even he can lift it? And this is actually not a question he came up with. I looked it online. This is actually an old theological debate based on these terms. Can God make a rock so big that not even he can lift it? Now, there are way too many limited assumptions about God here to make it worth our time to really try to unpack this question. But in short, the fundamental problem with this question is, one, God is both the rock and the act of lifting, which negates the question entirely. And two, God no longer lifts rocks because the last time he did, he threw out his back and had to rest on the seventh day. That's obvious. It says it in the Bible, in the subtexts. If you've ever tried to lift a mountain, trust me, the backs can go out. But this is the same basic question that is being posed to Rob. Questions with only two options, both of which lead to a dead end. Now, had Rob really been on his game, he could have turned to the interview, and I would have loved to have heard him say, we are God's hands and feet. We are God in expression. We are God in action. So when we are concerned with tragedies like the tsunami, we need to remember that God goes into action when we go into action. So while we sit here with our tiny little human perspective of the vastness of the universe, pontificating about what God should or should not do, pontificating about what God could or could not do, thinking about what is God actually capable of, do we forget what we are capable of? Because every moment wasted in questioning God is a moment we could have been helping others to experience God. That is how I wish Rob Bell had answered the question. But I had a little bit more time to think about it than he did, so I'm going to give him a pass on that. We really need to broaden our horizons here. Should God be only concerned with the things we as individuals are concerned with? That's really the basis of this whole argument here. Do you really think God should be just concerned with the things that we as human beings are concerned with? Should God's attention be solely on what grabs our attention? The disaster that happened in Japan is no doubt a tragedy beyond imagination. But on that very same day, thousands of women gave birth and brought in a new beautiful soul into this existence. And do we think that deserves God's attention? What about the trillions of beautiful things that happen on any given day on this planet, from a flower blooming in the mountains of Switzerland to the breeze going across the leaf of a tree in the Amazon? Does that deserve God's attention? Let's get some perspective here. What about all the stars and all the planets and all the celestial bodies in our galaxy and in the universe? Do the events in the infinite expanse of the universe, beyond just what's happening on our planet, do they deserve God's attention? I'm trying to push your walls here a little further out. Or should God only be concerned with what humans on this planet are concerned with? Watching TV. I respect that he's got a good beverage and a popcorn bowl, though, because that's important. There is humility that should come with a growing awareness of all that is. A humility that comes with recognizing that our particular perspective is but a tiny drop in an infinite ocean of possibilities. A tiny drop. God is incomprehensibly massive, but that does not mean that God is not also right here, right now. And that is the primary issue that we struggle with when trying to understand God. God is both personal and impersonal. God is both finite and infinite. God is so close that it moves in and through our very being. Yet God is so expansive that it's beyond even the furthest comprehension of our imagination to wrap our head around it. This is a very difficult task for the human mind to put together. And we have a natural tendency to personify things to try to help us understand them. And we have personified God. And in a way, I believe that has put a distance between us and understanding God. It started with calling God a he. But is God a he? Is God a he? We've also called God a goddess, a she. Is God a she? Yes. I knew I'd get you on that one. You guys can go out back and fight about that later. First service, there was a fist fight that broke out right here. This is what we're dealing with. And the mystic Jesus Christ was pushing us to broaden our horizons. He started with the term Father. Then that evolved into Father, Mother, God, to be more encompassing. And our understanding of God is broadening a bit with that, but we still fall short of truly understanding the nature of God. So we say God is omnipotent. We say God is omniscient. God is omnipresent, trying to broaden and understand the concept of this thing that is so difficult to understand, but getting a little bit further along. But even those words fall horribly short of what God is. In the book Lessons in Truth by H. Emily Cady, she does a great job of breaking that down. She says, God is power. Not simply God has power, but God is power. In other words, all the power there is to do anything is God. God, the source of our existence every moment, is not simply omnipotent, all-powerful. He is omnipotence, all-power. And you have to excuse her word he, because she was writing in a time when that was how you referred to God. He's not alone omniscient, all-knowing. He is omniscience, all-knowledge. He's not only omnipresent, but more omnipresent. God is not a being having qualities, but he is the good itself. To say God is omnipresent is still thinking of God as a thing, albeit a very big thing, but we're still thinking of God as a thing. To say God is omnipotent is to say that this thing has lots of power, right? It's still a thing, but it has lots of power. Then when we say omniscient, we're saying this thing knows a lot. This thing knows a lot, but yet it is still a thing. But all these words have limitation built into them because of our language. And because of our language, it could be limiting our experience of God because we're so trapped on to try to explain it with these words. And God is so much bigger than anything in the human language can possibly describe that we've struggled with this since language came about in the human experience. trying to put God into words, into expression. It always falls short, and the Chinese mystic Lao Tzu recognized this as such a problem. It's the very first thing he talks about in the Tao Te Ching. It's the very first thing he addresses. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Right off the bat, he says, we've got a problem. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the origin of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of a myriad things. Thus, constantly without desire, one observes its essence. Constantly with desire, one observes its manifestations. These two merge together, but differ in name. The unity is said to be the mystery. Mystery of mysteries, the door to all wonders. The unity between the finite and the infinite. The manifestation, the expression, and what's behind all of it. And I love that he uses the word unity. Man, I'm happy we coined that one. Nailed it, Fillmores. Even Lao Tzu, this beautiful mystic, resisted giving it a name because he knew as soon as he did, it would be misleading and it would be inaccurate. So he called it the Tao, a word which in Chinese is like a placeholder for something that can't be described. We've assumed it was a name for something, but it's actually just sort of a placeholder for something that can't be described. Kind of like when rappers use the word word because they can't come up with a rhyming word to go in that slot. So they use word as a placeholder, and then they rap word. But in the end, Lao Tzu had to call it something. He knew we had to call it something so we could start to have a conversation. So he called it the Tao. And we do have to call it something, and here is why. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, or one piece at a time. And what an unfortunately gross but applicable saying. We're trying to relate to and comprehend and describe something far more vast than words could possibly do justice or poke a stick at. So we break it down into smaller chunks, smaller expressions of this that we can more easily comprehend and refer to from one person to another. There are male qualities to God's nature. There are female qualities to God's nature. There are mothering and fathering qualities to God's nature, and there's a part of God's nature that is beyond beyond gender, beyond our concept of he or she, beyond our concept of mother or father. But we use these terms. And many religions and cultures recognize these different qualities of the divine. We have Father Sky, we have Mother Earth, we have Brother Sun, we have Sister Moon, we have Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, we have Father, Son, Holy Ghost. All of them can have value in helping us to relate with what we call God. But it is healthy to remember that none of them actually refer to the true essence of God. I believe it's healthy for us to remember that. We use these words to help us gain an understanding and grow, but it's important to remember none of them fully express what God is. And as soon as we think we understand God, I believe that is a sign from the universe that it's time to expand our concept of God. It's time to get a bigger God. As soon as we think we get it, it's time to grow again, to push the limits of what we think God is. Now, to help you in the process of relating to the divine and talking about the divine and understanding this essence we call God, I didn't want to leave you with nothing applicable. I didn't want to leave you hanging. So we have he, she, she, we have mother, father, we have all these words that inevitably will have to fall short because they are words and they can't refer to the expanse that it is. So what is the word that best describes God in all of its many manifestations? I think I actually have found it. And I think this will help you going forward. The best word to describe God is y'all. And that is the truth as I experience it. Thank you. South had it right all along.
God is not God of ego, lost in negativity.
Is there somewhere it says it's open forum? Okay, we're going to take an offering for unity now. Thank you for that insight. And as we take this offering, I invite you to remember that this is not a giving away of something. This is an investment into our own spiritual growth and the spiritual evolution of this planet. So we want to give accordingly to how much growth we want to experience and how much growth we want to see in the world. So you can say this offering blessing with me. I'll say it first, and then you can repeat it with me. Divine love is my true life and my conscious destiny, therefore I give. Together, please. Divine love is my true life and my conscious destiny, therefore I give.
All right. It is my privilege to introduce our musical act for today. This is my friend of 25 years, Greg Morgan, and he's gonna rock out on his mandolin here. Get it, Greg.
Thanks, Mike. I'm gonna get you on the drums eventually. We're gonna get you back on. We got Louie. Louie and I were in drumline growing up in Colorado, and I feel honored to be asked again to play as part of the music here. And these guys were kind enough to learn this one on the fly this morning, and I just wanted to bring a song that I've just been inspired with back visiting for a few weeks from New York, and just soaking up the mountains and the sunshine here and just the beauty of nature. And so I've been playing this groove. I just wanted to share it to you, with just the feeling of coming back home and just soaking up your roots and nature and everything that brings. So this is a new song we're working on. It goes like this. sunshine. Come on, Louis, break it down. Give me some of that signature drum groove. Break it down, Louis, break it down. All right, on the guitars, y'all. Nothing like Boulder, Colorado. Represent, represent. Thank you so much. Right on. Much love, y'all.
Awesome. Awesome. I taught him everything he knows. Well, I really appreciate the beautiful music. You guys are learning that this morning. Incredible. Really well done. If you're new here today, we want to welcome you. We invite you to raise your hand so the ushers could bring you a little gift we have for you. So if you're comfortable doing that, please raise your hand so they can find you. We're also going to have tea and coffee and snacks over in the fellowship hall, which is over here on your left, where you can come talk to the ministers and you can ask me questions and tell me all the ways I was wrong like you guys usually do. Very inviting. I really appreciate that. And so we're going to now sing our closing song. I invite you to rise and join me in the center aisle. Just hold that right there. Just hold that. Picture the earth surrounded in this energy, in this light and love, and make it so. Amen.